This all happened 19 years ago when my mum was a teenager. One night, my mother woke up to the sound of little pebbles being thrown at her window. My mother groaned as she looked at her clock. It read 1:19 a.m. It's 1 in the morning, she thought. Who the hell is throwing rocks at my window? She got up out of her bed and went to see what was making the noise. As my mother looked out of her window, she stood there frozen in shock. There was a man just standing there and smiling. He was tall, and he looked as though he was around 220 pounds. My mother was frozen in shock because she saw a glimpse of a shiny piece of metal in his left hand. She tried to yell out her mother, my grandmother, but she wasn't home at the time. She was out drinking with a few of her girlfriends. At the time, there were no cell phones in my mother's household. The only phone they had was a wired house phone in their living room. My mother ran downstairs to grab the phone to call the police. She had just barely started dialing the number to the police station when she heard banging on the front door.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a man trying to break into my house, and I think that he has a weapon.
Okay, what I need you to do is...
Oh my god.
Miss, you need to stay calm. Are you alone in the house right now?
Yes, my mum is out with a few of her friends.
Okay, there are officers on the way. Try to stay calm until they get there. Are you okay? Can you hear me? If you can hear me, help is on the way.
Who the hell are you? My mother screamed at the door where the man was trying to break in. What do you want? The man had broken a hole in the door with his foot. My mother ran upstairs and locked herself in the bathroom. A few minutes of silence, and then she had to stifle a scream as she heard a loud bang come from downstairs. The man had finally kicked the door in, and still no sign of the police. She heard loud, heavy footsteps going throughout her house with the occasional moving of furniture. After another few minutes passed, she heard the heavy footsteps thump up the stairs, one by one. She was terrified when the man stepped up the final stair. My mother looked through the lock in the door, and she saw it. That chilling smile. His mouth reached almost one ear to the other, and there was meat and blood between on his yellow pointy teeth. He was at the top of the stairs, and my mum opened the door and shoved him as hard as she could down the stairs. He was still smiling, probably more than he was before. He hit the bottom of the stairs with a thud, still smiling, knife still in hand. He stood up and started running up the stairs. That's when my mother thrusted her knife into his right kneecap. He fell onto his knee and gripped his leg, still smiling, blood spilling out of his knee and onto his pants, onto his hands, and onto the floor. Finally, my mother heard the sirens of a nearby police car. She ran down the stairs out of her own busted down door, signalling for help. My mother had told the police everything that had happened, and the police went in to investigate what had happened. They went up the stairs to investigate, and they see him, standing tall, and he was still smiling. The officer pulled his gun out of his holster and pulled the trigger. The man fell to the floor and down the stairs face first. The officer flipped over the body to see if he was dead. He was. But he was still smiling. The ghost of the smiling man still haunts that street, kidnapping people and devouring them limb from limb. Ever since my parents died when I was little, I've had this reoccurring nightmare which has always ended in some run-down replication of my old family house. I would slowly go up the stairs, enter my parents' bedroom, and see something which never failed to wake me up in a cold, sweaty state of terror. Of course, I can never remember what this thing was or what it looked like. Until today. It's been about a decade since the last time I've had this nightmare. They just stopped happening one day. Nevertheless, I would still wake up frightened from time to time, sometimes in a different part of my room. This morning, I woke up at my desk, naked, staring at a drawing I had apparently made in my sleep. I recognised his face immediately, and I remembered how I felt during the nightmares. Why was it that I kept entering the house even though I knew such horror waited at its end? It was the house I grew up in, the house I should feel welcomed by. In the nightmare, however, only rotten and broken down remnant of its forgotten past remained. And yet something inside seemed to call to me. I always entered the house without hesitation. The front door opened on its own, leading into the hallway with wooden stairs on the right. The steps creaked as I made my way up to the bedroom, and a howling wind made the house tremble as it could collapse at any moment. At the top of the stairs, you could see directly into the bedroom of my parents. It was pitch dark in there, but I could still feel his gaze piercing me. As I approached the doorway, I could see the darkness slowly vanishing, revealing its secrets. In the centre stood a silhouette of a bed. I could just make out my mum and my dad. They were asleep. But next to him, he sat there, watching me with his hollow eyes and macabre grin on his face. With a jittery motion, his head turned towards my parents, stretching out his thin and wrinkly arm. Then I'd wake up. I wonder now if the nightmares ever really stopped. Could it be possible that my mind started blocking out the memories from them happening? What if my subconscious, sleeping self is trapped there with this thing whenever I'm asleep without me knowing? Maybe this drawing was a cry for help, to try and make the awakened me remember. Fuck. I just don't know what to do. I know they're just dreams, but why would my mind go to such lengths to stop them? What is the significance? I need to get some sleep, but I'm too afraid. Too afraid of meeting him again. Too afraid of finding out what I'm capable of doing in my sleep. Post note. This chilling handwritten note and drawing were found in the basement of the McLeod residence, where the 31-year-old George McLeod and his girlfriend Krista, 35, met grisly fate last January. The couple were found bludgeoned to death when the mother of Krista came by, presumably 3 days after the incident, to drop off their 4-year-old daughter, who was staying with her grandparents over the weekend, and discovered their bodies. The note, which is believed to have been written by George, has led the police to start investigating the possibility of a murder-suicide. We'll update you on the latest news regarding this horrible tragedy, leaving the girl orphaned overnight. I'm currently 18, but this happened when I was around 12 years old, and I was living in an apartment on the 3rd floor where me and my sister shared a room. One day, as I was walking home from school, there was this strange Russian lady standing still in front of the building. She was looking around and she appeared to be in her 60s. I'd seen her around before. She'd either sit outside on one of the benches or look outside her window. I never thought anything of it, since that's what I've always seen elderly people do. I never took the steps. I always used the elevator, and as I was waiting in front of it, the woman suddenly emerged next to me. We stood next to each other in silence until we both got in and the door closed. Suddenly, she turned her whole body towards me without a word, stretched her hand out. I looked at her a bit in confusion, but she only whispered, "Take them." My parents always told me about strange danger and that giving a kid candy was one of the biggest no-goes. Never accept it. Yet, I used to be really shy back then, and I thought I'd be rude if I rejected it. So I took them, and I hoped that the elevator would go faster, so that I could return to the safety of my room. Soon she began asking me questions. "What's your name?" I told her a fake one. "How old are you?" I said I was 16, just seemed to be more mature. Then she began to ask me where my parents are, what floor I was living on, and what exact door number I have, which school I go to. And then came the really chilling question. "Can I come with you?" I've lied to her about most of the things and said that my parents weren't there right now, but I'm going to visit my aunt who lives on the 3rd floor, where I was headed. I got out, and so did she. There was a door that you'd have to unlock before you could go to your house door, where multiple doors are from different people. I didn't want to unlock it though. I just laughed nervously and said that I wanted to spend some time with her, and I really had to go. I didn't want to open the door until I was sure that she had left. She nodded and silently walked down the stairs. However, as soon as I unlocked the door, I heard fast, rapid footsteps echoing through the hallway, and it sounded like they were walking upstairs. I quickly shut the door, and it was transparent and blurry. My apartment door was the very first one on the left, and just as I was about to unlock it, I felt my heart drop down to my feet. It was her. I could see the outline of the woman standing so still as if she was frozen. She was staring directly at me. She was way too close for my liking, and I immediately locked the door behind me. I called my mum, but she didn't pick up. I went to my bathroom and waited until my sister came. I asked her if she had seen an old woman, and she said that she hadn't seen anyone. Then I threw the candy that she had given me away. My parents' room had a big window where you could see outside the hallway, and I saw the woman pass a few times. One time I woke up at night and saw a silhouette standing in the corner. I pulled the covers over my head, cold sweat on my back. It looked like a person. But when I pulled it down to a glance, there was nothing anymore. Needless to say, I never took the elevator again, or went into the basement, which was the community one, and each had a little stall that was very close to one another, and it only had one flickering light bulb with no windows. It looked like a horror movie. Sometimes I'd hear a woman cry in the middle of the night, and for some reason, my gut feeling was telling me that it was connected to her, that strange Russian woman. After a few months, my family moved out of there to settle into a bigger place. It was a house. And I saw the woman looking at me through a window, staring at me the whole time, for one last time. But the weird thing was, I thought she lived in floor 1, since I used to see her look out of the same window there. Now, she was on floor 3, on the left part, the closest door to mine. After we moved, I haven't seen her anymore, but it is definitely something that haunts me. Something about her was just deeply morbid and creepy. Is not my son. They tell me he's not dead, that he is alive and well, happy even. But it's a lie. A mother knows her son, and mine is dead. That thing is not my son. Jacob always had the best smile, right from the minute he was born. I was so worried something would be wrong with him, but he was just perfect. Without a doubt, worth missing 9 months of my medication. I was so over the moon when he was born. His dad was never in the picture, thanks to that wife of his, but we got on fine by ourselves. Everything was perfect until Jacob turned 5 and he had started to go to school. I almost didn't let him go. The world is such a dangerous place, and if he was at school, how could I protect him? But I knew I couldn't protect him if the state took him away from me either. So he had to go. It is my biggest regret. During parent-teacher conferences, this snooty little plum of a teacher had the audacity to question my parenting style. Okay, so maybe most kids were out of diapers by 5, but Jacob was my baby. And there wasn't anything wrong with that. She was also worried that he only ate soft foods. I knew that her worry was really just her being jealous that my baby was still my baby, while her kids probably hated her guts. I told her right where she could stick her opinions about my parenting and left. I pulled Jacob out of school the next week and decided what my angel really needed was homeschooling. Nobody would ever look out for him the way like his mother could. Jacob was a superb student, always following directions and completing the tasks. Sure, most of it was just colouring and playing outside, but I knew what my little genius needed the most. By 3rd grade, I knew he'd make it big someday. By 4th grade, it all fell apart. My lawyer was good enough to explain what happened to me after the trial. Apparently, some nosy neighbour saw Jacob in his diaper outside and was concerned that a 9-year-old would still not be toilet trained. The next part is a total lie that she made up because she's jealous of how my son is. She said that she came over to ask me about it and I lashed out, hitting and scratching her while screaming profanities. I know I would never do that in front of Jacob, but this lying bitch went and called the cops on me. She must have done a damn good job to make herself look all beat up too, because they arrested me and called CPS for Jacob. My lawyer advised me to plead not guilty due to mental disease or defect, so I did. And I only had to do 6 months in state hospital before I was allowed out. My first priority was getting Jacob back. The state doctor who I was assigned to said he did not believe I would ever harm my son, which meant CPS had to give him back to me. But the kid they brought to my house wasn't Jacob. This kid had braces, wasn't wearing a diaper, and could talk in complete sentences. They told me Jacob's foster family had been exceptionally kind to him, helping him get caught up to other kids in his age. I couldn't believe it. This was clearly not my son, and they just expected me to believe them? Hell no. I slapped that smug little grin off the caseworker's face so damn fast she didn't even see it coming. I told them to get the hell out of my house and not come back until they had my real son. That was a year ago. I keep calling my lawyer asking where my son is and why nobody is looking. They must be paying him more than me, because he keeps saying that this strange little boy was my Jacob and that the state is afraid I might have another violation outburst and hurt him. I would never hurt my son, but that little shit was not my Jacob. I don't know where he is, but I'm sure they've killed him. All I want is to get some closure, to see his body laid to rest. Please, if you know where they've hidden the real Jacob, tell me. And don't try to lie like that caseworker. A mother knows her own son. If you've stuck around after the video, then this is going to be a little shout out. So thank you very, very much to everyone on Reddit that was kind enough to let me use their stories for this video. You're all talented writers, and I really cannot wait to see what else you're going to write about. I also want to thank Braden for being an absolute star and doing the voice of the phone operator in the story The Smiling Man. Thank you to everyone. Stay safe and God's guide.